Okay, internet's a bit slow, but we are live. Greetings, greetings, family. Sister Shanice in the house. Welcome, welcome to another edition of the Sister Shanice Show. As you can see, today is a panel lineup. We've got a very interesting group of brothers from the continent who are going to be discussing a range of issues with us this evening. So I'm absolutely delighted to have with me in the studio today, some brothers that I've worked with in the past and one that I haven't, but you're going to be meeting each of them in turn. So, and let everybody know that we are live. I do warn you, family, we have been having some internet challenges on the continent, and I'm hoping that it won't get in the way of the show today, because the brothers who we've got, they've got some powerful messages that they want to be bringing to the family today. So as you come through the house, let us know that you're here. Drop us a message in the chat. You can use the chat to interact with our guests. Okay, do keep us in the loop of the conversations. I know sometimes on my shows in the chat you all tend to have your own conversations, but do keep us involved and in the loop. So we've got our brother Kepele Muchachi in the house. He is a Congolese, born in the DRC, and he's an activist around the area of social justice. He's living in South Africa. He had to flee the country. Just imagine, having to flee the country of your origin, the country of your birth, as millions of people from Congo have had to do. Nevertheless, even though they've left the country, they're still very concerned about what's happening at home. And so we're going to be hearing from our brother Kepele. He's going to be sharing with us some information about his activism, what it's like living abroad and having to, still continue to support the people in the Congolese, what the issues are in the Congo. He'll be sharing that with us today. He's also the founding member of the Congolese Renaissance Movement as well. It's a grassroots organization. We're going to be hearing more about that today and the great works that they're doing on the ground to raise consciousness amongst the people in the Congo. We've also got in the house our brother Kabbalah, who may not be a stranger to those of you who've been with us for a little while. Our brother Kabbalah, yes, he has been on the Sister Shanice show before. And if you remember him, you'll remember the powerful messages that he's delivered in the past. And he's also from the DRC Congo. He's an author of the book called The Exploration of the Mind Without Compensation and What Time Is It? The question to the African millenniums. And so he's a community developer and been doing a huge amount of work in the community, and also a member of the African Continental Unity Party. We've got our brother who is driving at the moment, brother Antumi, who's driving at the moment, but he will be coming live on the platform as soon as he arrives at his destination. And so as you come through the house, I want to welcome you. I want to thank you for joining this evening's discussion. It's going to be a really interesting debate. I've been looking forward to this one as well. Please let everybody know that we are live. I am going to be doing the same in a very short while whilst our guest introduces themselves. But let me just remind you of what the panel debate is going to be about today on the Sister Shanice Show. So those of you who have who have already been in receipt of my circulation, if you're on my circulation list, you will already be aware. So let me go over to my notes here. Oh, my internet's running so slow, so I'm going to have to wait for the details of that to come up. But in the meantime, let me ask our brother Kepele to introduce himself and welcome the Sister Shanice Show audience.
Okay, no, thank you, comrade, for the opportunity just to be part of the discussion this evening. Kapele Mtachi from Democratic Republic of Congo, but currently I am living in South Africa. I fled the country due to the security challenges. Originally, I'm from the eastern part of Congo, where from time to time the rebels movement and government forces are fighting for the control of land, minerals, and so forth and so on. I've been here for more than 15 or 16 years in the Republic of South Africa, and where I am trying by all means just to organize our own fellow Congolese brothers and sisters who are living here to make sure that we actively participate in whatever is happening in DRC, so that we can bring a concrete transformation that we want to see in that particular country. So, as you mentioned that I'm a member or among the members of the founders of Congolese Renaissance Movement. So this is a social movement that is based here, but it also has connection back home. We work with various organizations. We participate whenever there is a problem that requires our assistance. We participate in organizing conferences, seminars, and we go live on various international media to make sure that we speak about the material conditions that our people are living. Because what is happening in DRC, a lot of people around the world, they know that there is war. In DRC, people are fighting, but they don't understand exactly the realities on the ground, where our mothers, our sisters are raped, massacred, mutilated. It's very horrific. So that is untold story. So we know the control mainstream media, obviously they cannot document such atrocities that are committed by various rebel movements. And we know the reason behind that. Behind the killing in DRC, there is a capitalist profit. There is a capitalist interest in that particular war. So we decided by saying that home is home. We can live outside of the country, yes, but we still have that revolutionary duty, to develop a new capable political, ideological grounded leadership that will lead, that will organize, mobilize, educate, and conscientize our people, and lead them to a struggle that will bring a socio-economic, changes that we want to see in our country. Basically, it's what we do in Africa and here in South Africa, and then we don't only limit ourselves in Congo or here in South Africa. We believe that our struggle is linked to the struggle of millions of oppressed, exploited, and marginalized people in the world. So we connect ourselves with other oppressed people so that we can build this internationalism, that will end, the exploitative and oppressive system that has robbed the future of millions of Congolese and also other people, marginalized people in Latin America, in Asia, and elsewhere. So that is the task that we do, and we always seek solidarity from different organizations when we are organizing seminars, and what we need, people to participate, so that they can also be ambassador, leading the campaign that we are leading. Because the war in DRC, it's an economic war. It's a war for transnational corporations that they are seeking the resources, especially in the eastern part of Congo, so that they can feed or support their industrial base in various parts of the world. So let me stop there. That is the introduction that I want to put there before we start the topic of today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Capelle. A very touching opening there as well, you know, that just very quickly took us to the DRC and to the reality of what's happening there. Your struggle is our struggle. It's one struggle, as you said, you know, for oppressed people globally. And, you know, I think many of us are aware, but not to the extent that we need to be aware of what's actually going on in the DRC. And so we're glad that you're here, you know, raising our awareness and conscientizing people as to what is going on in the Congo. And as you quite rightly, you know, have done, you put your finger on the problem. You know, it's the capitalists, those who want to access the Congolese resources and minerals for nothing, you know, that are causing the mayhem and the problems. But, you know, we as a people, we also need to get more clarity about precisely where the problem is and what's happening to see if we can make sure that our very own people are not part of the problem. So we're going to be hearing a lot more, family, from our brother Capelle as the evening goes on. Before we go over to our brother Kapala, just want to rise up everybody who's already in the house. Thank you so much. Let us know where in the world you're actually watching us from as well. I know we have a global family here. I see we've got the Jamaican Junkro in the house. We've got Sister Afrojamo from Ghana in the house. We've got Brother Gebra from the UK in the house. Unapologetic Mystic is in the house, you know, so we can see we've got our family coming through the door. We welcome you. We've got Brother Kwame Aboche in the house as well. Welcome, each and every one of you. Please do share the link. Let people know that we are live. Mondele is in the house saying Yenge, Mbata, what's this one? Oh, I know, I'll try. Yenge Mbota, Nambino Bana Mboka Kabala Namuchachi. You'll understand that. How did I do, Capelle? Yenge, my brother Mundele, who's also from the DRC in the Congo. Yenge Mimpa Kiambote, back at you, my brother. Delium is in the house, watching us from Ghana as well. Welcome. Unapologetic, are you in West Ghana as well? We've got the Ghanaians in the house, the Africans from the West Coast in the house. Welcome. Okay, we are one family, irrespective of where we may be born in the world. We are one family. As Africans, some of us, we may have been born in the USA, we might have been born in the UKKK, we might have been born in the Congo or in Ghana or in Zimbabwe or South Africa. Irrespective of where we were born, we are one people, we are Africans. So I want to rise up my African brothers and sisters around the world. Let's go over now to our brother Kabala. He's already let us know that there's some load shedding going on in his region. Hopefully it won't interfere too much with you know, his introduction, because I think it's about that time he's going to be switching power. But let's go straight over to him now. Brother Comrade Kabala, we welcome you. Please introduce yourself to the Sister Shanisha audience.
Thank you very much, Queen. It's always a pleasure to be with you and have this discussion. So my name is King Kabala, a member of the African Continental Unity Party. I'm also born in the colonial enclosure that we call the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm author of 2 books now, as you said, The Expropriation of the Mind Without Compensation and the What Time Is It? The Question to the African Millennials. I'm a communication member of the ACUP, as I said, which is the African Continental Unity Party. Recently formed, already established, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, busy growing, Kenya, and trying to introduce it in the Francophone Africa for the liberation and emancipation of Africa. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you very much, Brother Kabala. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you in the house as well. We will introduce our brother Tumi once he is online, because he's driving at the moment, and we don't want him driving and speaking to us because we wanted to keep his attention on the road for safety. So today's discussion, family, is as follows. We're going to be talking about the rise of the wars that are happening on the borders of some of our African countries. We're going to be also looking at the external reliance on aid, political interference, social, political, economic and legal injustices, and the injustices that are impacting on the masses, those of us as a people who are on the receiving end of this really wicked, evil capitalist system. So we're going to be having a conversation on that, and we're going to be asking the question, is it time for us as Africans to be decolonizing our minds, to be focusing on an Afrocentric, developing an Afrocentric mindset as opposed to a Eurocentric mindset? Here in the UK, we were looking at the education system, and we noted that, from the 60s, from the 1960s, we have been complaining about the British education system failing us as Africans born in the UK, and nothing has changed in 60 years. So what is clear is that the system is working very well for those who have created the education system to European our mindset, working well for them. But for us, it's killing our prospects, and it's killing the prospects of future generations. It's fueling wars, it's causing divisions, and it's causing mayhem. First of all, let me go over to Brother Kapala now for him to open the topic for discussion today. You've just put yourself on mute. You were actually off mute, Brother Kapilia. Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry for that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think the discussion that we have today is very important when we talk about decolonization of the mind. As you said, you stated, is it time for decolonization of the mind of African people? I think that was actually supposed to be the first step before we get to what we have commonly referred to as independence. And the reason being that you can free a person from a prison, but it's a person who can eventually get the condition of imprisonment out of himself. And I'm always referring to this by saying that as African people, we are involved in struggling for development. We want Africa to be developed today, to be, for example, like China, to be like UK, to be like the US. Well, depending on who colonized you, we want Africa to be developed, to have all these taller buildings, all this stuff that we see in other countries around the world. But we, by having this kind of mindset, we overlook at the African man or African woman himself, because is the one who's supposed to be, or she is the one who's supposed to be at the center of any development initiative. Now, when we focus much on developing buildings or developing roads or these physical infrastructures, which are very important anyway, but not focusing as well on the development of human beings, we'll have a situation whereby we build things for people, but people don't know how to manage those things, simply because in the mindset of the people, they haven't fully developed the capability of self-management. That's what I'm talking about. So I think the first mission that we have in Africa today is not to even fight or to struggle for development, as we call it. Development as such is an agenda of Europeans to distract Africa from achieving the most important or the main goal that we had. And that goal is liberation and emancipation of Africa. You cannot tell a person who is still in the prison to develop, because the only dream that the person can have being in prison is to become as a prison ward, as a prison guard. So to say, it doesn't know the world outside there. I'm always giving this analogy to say that if you put a woman in a prison and she conceives in the prison there, and she gives she give birth to a child, well, the child will grow up dancing and jumping and doing the things that a normal child does, even though the child is in prison, because this child does not know that he is or she is in prison. However, the mother who was outside before she was obviously put in prison, she may know the value of freedom which has been taken away from her. So this is the situation of the current African men and African women, especially this younger generation, which is a generation of TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. We don't know exactly what is freedom is in fact. So we're asking much for development. We are talking about development, but I just believe that the first thing that we need now in Africa is liberation. And once you are liberated, development will put itself in place, because development is a natural process. Animals in the forest, they don't need anybody to lecture them on how to develop. The same as a fish, they don't need anybody to lecture them how to develop, because what they need is to be in a correct environment, which is obviously proper to their nature. Eventually they will develop automatically or naturally. The same thing with us as human being. We are living in the condition of subjection today, which makes our life to be a life of people who are still imprisoned, so to say, or slave to the system of capitalism or international capitalism. So we need, first of all, liberation and emancipation. When we gain our liberation, automatically development will put itself in place. So in other words, coming back to the context, this liberation, it's actually in the mind, as I said. When the African man and African woman is now liberated from the shackles of his mind, he will be able to know himself what he needs to do to develop Africa. We don't need Chinese to come now to build the roads for us, which will break down the next morning. We don't need Europeans to send us their think tanks groups to come and tell us what we need to do to develop Africa. No, because the African men and African women has been fully developed and liberated, from our minds. So we'll know what to do, and we'll do that which we need to do according to our culture, our tradition, and our ways of life. So to respond to the question briefly, yes, we are at that stage where we cannot have a prospect of better future out of the 21st century until we decolonize psychologically the mind, or we decolonize the mind of African men and African women, or we operate what I can call a psychological decolonization of African men and African women, so that we can then create the conditions of African development once we are now freed. Because being in these colonial enclosures that we are embracing so much, as Burkina Faso, as Ghana, as Nigeria, as Congo, which were created by our oppressors, not for our own benefits, but only for the exploitation of our resources and the enslavement of our mind, we cannot really achieve that development that we are talking about every day. If it was possible, then we could have achieved it within the past 60 years of a post-independence period that we have been struggling, changing regimes, trying to find democratic means for development to take place. But it doesn't happen simply because the system in which we are operating and the mindset of African people, these two things are not geared to work together to create what we call development. So we need firstly to operate the psychological emancipation or liberation of African people, or decolonization, and then development will put itself in place. Thank you.
Off mute. I'm off mute now. Thank you so much, Comrade Kabbalah, for that opening there. Absolutely agree with what you were saying there. Brother Kapili, can you put yourself on mute when you're not speaking, please? And then if we all mute ourselves when we're not speaking, yeah, we won't get any background echoing noise coming back. Thank you, Brother Kapili. Absolutely agree. First and foremost, is the decolonization of the mind. Because once the African mind has been decolonized, once the African mind, is clear about once we as Africans are in our right mind and we know who we are and our capabilities, then we won't need, as you said, the Chinese, the Europeans, or anyone else to come in to tell us what development ought to look like, because that knowledge is already trapped within our DNA. And once that mind is unshackled, wow, 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 I agree with all of that. But Brother Kapili, let's bring you in now. And if you can kindly open up today's topic from your perspective as well, in terms of decolonizing the mind.
No, okay, thank you very much. I think the answer is yes. This is the right time to change our mindset, because the colonial era is gone, but we are still dominated by a colonial mindset, which sometimes we even undermine our own values. We undermine our own skills, and blindly embrace anything that is Western. And this is the reason why there is a very little progress in Africa. So the starting point, it's just to decolonize the African mind. So that is the starting point. So if we manage to defeat or to dismantle the anatomy, I normally call it the anatomy of defeat, because if you go back into the history, our forefathers, they were defeated by colonists, and then our land and the wealth were taken, and our parents were born and bred in the colonial environment, and then they were made to believe that they are lesser than white people, and then for them to be very successful and prosperous, they need to mimic the Western ways of dressing, speaking, eating, education, and so forth and so on. So, and then that particular message has been given to us, and if we don't take now a decisive decision to correct that, we'll end up passing on the same anatomy of defeat, to our children to their children, and grandchildren, and that dominance will continue there. And the development that we want to see in Africa, it won't happen, because the education system, it does not fit for purpose. We've been taught to be workers, not entrepreneurs. We've been taught to be machines operators, not to be people who are designing those machines. So we've been taught to be builders, but not architects. But I think we need to start by decolonizing. So that is the point of departure. So the moment, because the battle over the years, it has been the battle of mind. Once the mind is captured, then there is nothing that you can do. So we must make sure that in this battle of ideas, we must be present in all these institutions of higher learning to go there and demystify, to negate, to ensure that we assist our own comrades, our own brothers and sisters to unlearn the venom that has been deposited to them. So the venom that makes us believe that in order for us to develop, we need to embrace any way of doing things from Western perspectives. So anything that is Africanist, is labeled as backwardness. So therefore, we need to run away from it. And anything that is labeled Western, it's more progressive. So, and this is where there is a danger. So we cannot develop ourselves, in this continent. We need to understand our own material and social conditions so that we can develop our own development agenda that will address the socio-economic conditions that we are facing in Africa. But the unfortunate part of it, our leaders are busy importing all these Washington consensus model. We are told we need to implement a structural adjustment program. So all these programs are pro-capital. They are not pro masses. They are not pro-working class. They are not pro-poor people. So all these model of development that we are importing from the West are aimed not to develop Africa, rather to underdevelop the continent itself. So in order for us to get there, the first thing that we need to do is that decolonizing, decolonize the African mind. We make sure that, you know, the anatomy of defeat, it ends with us. We don't need to pass it on to our children and our children to their children. Otherwise, we won't come out of the chains of this Western mindset, because currently they control the public opinion, you know, they control the public discourse, you know, whatever we are taught at school, it reflects and it advances, you know, at the interest of the class, you know, that control the means of production, not only here in Africa, in other continent or other countries where, you know, majority of the people, they found themselves subjugated, you know, to high socioeconomic conditions of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. So that is the point of departure. If we are able to come up with a campaign that will start to, you know, change the mindset of an African child, to educate the African child that, you know, whatever we are doing, you know, we can do it here in Africa, you know, in the education system, our own languages. We need to use our own languages to teach our own kids, you know, because if you go to countries like China, they are doing mathematics in a Mandarins, in Germans, and what? Why not? You know, we were doing mathematics in a foreign language. Kwame Nkrumah, he taught us that a foreign language is for foreign benefit. So now currently we are talking what? We are talking English. Why not can't we talk in our own? We know the complexities that are there because we speak different languages, but we'll come to that. But the point of departure, I also want to agree with Comrade Kabbalah that the struggle is the struggle to liberate the mindset of an African child. Once our mind has been liberated, then everything will come into places. So, but if we want to implement models while we are still, you know, captured by the colonial mind, the colonial way of thinking, of doing things, then it will be very difficult for us to transform, you know, the African continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Kapili. Again, I have to agree with everything that you've just said there as well. You know, the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And you talked about, you know, the indoctrination that we have had as a people into believing that everything from the West is best and everything that is African is inferior. And we absolutely must break that cycle, you know, that belief system, which has kept us enchained and kept us impoverished for far too long. And you know, key to unshackling that bondage of a mindset is taking back control of our education system and making sure that our children and young people get an education that values and elevates us as Africans, and not a Eurocentric education that denigrates and demonizes everything African. I was talking on my radio show earlier today, actually, about, you know, how we as Africans are trendsetters in terms of our fashion and how creative we are, you know, in terms of the sciences and the technologies and everything. But we have been so convinced and conditioned that everything of the West is best. We abandon our traditional clothes, and most of Africa has been flooded with second-hand European clothes. You know, and such is the mindset in terms of where we're at. Many of our people are wearing second-hand European clothes when we could be making our own clothes, creating our own factories that are making our own clothes, and, you know, using our creativity to our advantage. And here we are importing everything European, their cars, their vehicle, and everything European, when we could be creating industries and making our own if we valued, you know, our abilities to do for self, instead of believing the narrative that the West is best. But we don't underestimate the power of that system that has indoctrinated us to have that belief system. It's coming at us in a multiplicity of ways through their media, which they spend trillions of dollars on every year. And why do they spend trillions? To ensure that we get the message. That's because it's about programming us. That's because it's about controlling our mind, the way we see things and everything that we do. So we can't underestimate the power of their media and also the power of their institutions and organizations to enforce, you know, their rule of law, the religious systems, the religions of the invaders that we have embraced as our own as well, has conditioned the mind of the people. Their religions tell us how to think, how to behave, turn the other cheek, love your enemy, love your neighbor, forgive, you forget. You know, their religions have been very clever in conditioning the mind and the conduct of us as a people. And so, you know, yeah, the war has taken on a different shape now and a different disguise. And you know, we have to take back control of our minds. I'm agreeing, family, with everything that I'm hearing so far. I'm going to be introducing our brother Ntumbi next, but before I do, just want to quickly jump over to the audience and just take a quick look and see a bit of the discussion that's going on in there. And to members of my panel, if you can see the chat, feel free as well when you come in if you want to address any of the points that's being made. Yes, the Jamaican junker was reminding us, you know, about the wicked evilness of King Leopold, who chopped off the hands of millions of Congolese people who didn't produce enough rubber. That is, you know, a tragedy that is beyond comprehension. You know, millions, not even hundreds of thousands, millions of Africans suffered during the reign of King Leopold. And he goes on to, yeah, and I agree, claim that this man was wicked. And unfortunately, we are still suffering from the legacy in other ways. Yes, indeed, we are. I want to welcome Africa Child Care Nation from the Human Rights Agency. Yes, welcome to have you here today. We've got Brother Kwame Aboje, who's saying, Africans, we must free ourselves from the so-called Western Hemisphere. So a brother there agreeing that we need to free our minds because, you know, technically we're meant to be free, but we're not free because our minds has still been colonized and our mind is still in the hands of the oppressor. They tell us how to think. And so until we can get back our African mind, you know, we are in trouble. Let's go over to our brother Antumi. Let me briefly introduce him and welcome him to you. Our brother Toa CJ is a historian, artist, and Pan-Africanist. He's currently a professor of the global history of New York University in Madrid. He's the president of the Official Council for the Elimination of Racial or Ethnic Discrimination, linked to the Spanish Ministry of Equality. He holds a PhD in History, Culture and Thought from the University of Alcalá in Spain, with a thesis on the African presence in the Iberian Peninsula and the Balearic Islands from the Iron Age to present times. That is a show all by itself, which I hope we'll be able to bring you at some future time. And he completed his teaching phase of the PhD in International Relations and African Studies at the Autonomous University of Madrid and has a degree in General History from the University of Balearic Islands. So much more I could say about this brother, but let me leave it there for now because we want to hear from the man himself. Welcome, welcome, Brother Ntumbi, and thank you so much for being part of the show today. Please let me allow you to continue with your introduction.
Ujambo, asante sana.
Asante
Thank
sana.
you for having me here. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, sister. Thank you, brothers. What can I say about myself? I'm an African of the diaspora. I was born in Colombia. Family who traces his roots in Sierra Leone. My father was a white Spaniard, and I also have Native American ancestry in me. So that's my genetic background. Though I've been living in Spain most of my life, Considering myself African, I've been involved into various initiatives of the African community in Spain, and I've been the initiator of some of them, protecting the rights of migrants in Spain, getting involved into various Pan-Africanist organizations here, not only in Spain, but also in Europe and in Africa, Latin America, etc., and trying to push our liberation. Although I do have, sometimes I do have different perspectives around specific issues that I would like to share with you when possible. But I'm a firm believer on our liberation, and of course I agree with the brothers on the need on decolonizing our minds. That's the first step, and I think the analysis has been done. We already know that we must decolonize ourselves, but this is the second step, which is a little more difficult, is how, and not only how in the sense just by saying it is difficult or such things, no, because I think it's very much possible, but how are we going to design that new Africa that we want to create? That's very important, because there is no clear design nowadays on what are we going to do. We are very much aware, or many of us, those who are in the revolutionary path, know very well that we need to decolonize ourselves. We need to abandon all this legacy of oppression through culture, like the old brother said, we are speaking a European language and such things. So we are very clear on that. We know that very much. But how are we going to do it? Because I don't know if that's the moment to talk about this, but I will introduce this question, is that we must have a serious knowledge and a deep knowledge on the situation prior to the invasion of Europeans and also Arabs. Let's not forget Arabs and Europeans. So prior to that situation, we had hundreds of nations in our continent, hundreds of nations. Okay. And that was our legacy to the world, because we were the most diverse continent on earth. Perfect. But nowadays, we need to build a continental culture, a continental nation. And we need to choose among those cultures, what are we going to do? For instance, which language are we going to choose? Which kind of rituals, state rituals, are we going to perform? Which kind of history are we going to teach to our kids to create that Pan-African nation that we need? Because if we go, of course, the creation of that Pan-African nation will not erase, will not obliterate, will not blow up the pre-existing nations like the Yoruba, Hausa, etc., Lingala, etc. No, but we are going to create something continental if we want to have unity. And we need to do that because, of course, I'm very much fan of the history. I can talk a lot about history, but we are in the 21st century, according to the European standards, because these calendars are also European. These calendars are also European, but we are in the present, and we cannot go to a situation that will weaken us. So we must move forward from our own grounds, cultural grounds, but move forward to a position that will make us stronger. Because in the previous situation, we were disunited. This should be told. We must know our past, and we were disunited, many nations fighting against each other. Of course, Europeans were promoting all this, we know, but that was the previous situation. Now we need to create a situation in which we will be united. So to do that, we need a new design. We've been talking about Congo, South Africa. These are post-colonial creations. I don't believe any Pan-African, any real Pan-Africanist should not believe in such nations. Should not believe in such nations. Such nations are artificial creations of the Europeans, and we are very much attached to that. Very much attached to that. So I do have my ideas on what we can do, but maybe as the conversation goes on, concerning what I've been doing in Spain, I've been involved in Pan-Africanism as well as anti-racism, and I don't think this is incompatible. As many people do say, this is incompatible. You cannot be in Pan-Africanism and at the same time in anti-racist policies. But I'm into both, and I can tell you that's perfectly compatible. We understand each situation. Just because we want to build a stronger Africa, we are not going to abandon our issues in the diaspora. So that's the key way to see it. And of course, my desire is to return to Africa one day. But nowadays, sadly, I'm living in the diaspora, and I must also confront the issues here. And the best way here in the diaspora is with anti-racism, and in our continent is with Pan-Africanism. And so I've been into initiatives to change the laws, to create new laws, to protect the migrants' rights, and such type of initiatives here.
Thank you so much, Brother Antumi, and keep up the great works where you are as well, because, you know, it's important that wherever we are as Africans, you know, we are working towards protecting the rights of our people, because, you know, especially those of us in the diaspora where we are the minority, you know, we know only too well how the system treats and abuses people of color in Europe, and I'm sure most of our people on the continent are also very aware of the discriminatory and racist practices that are targeted at our people in the diaspora. And you see, you know, I agree with you as well. Our history is so important. We need to have knowledge of our history so that we don't make the same mistakes of the past. You mentioned that, you know, prior to the invasion of the Arabs and the European, you know, we were as a people fighting against each other. You know, and sadly, we've spent so much time fighting each other, we didn't realize the bigger enemy that was outside that became the enemy within, and then the enemy from within that took over, you know, and fueled the fighting between us. And then eventually, when we weakened ourselves, managed to take over. And that same game was being played all over Europe, because at one time we were, you know, the majority population in Europe. We were the indigenous people of Europe, us as Africans. But we fought so much against ourselves, we weakened ourselves there, and we allowed these people who we allowed to live among us, initially as friends, you know, that then became our invaders, you know, to take over those parts of the world that we had control of. So the same could be said for the Americas, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, all these places around the world where we were the indigenous people. You know, we were unable to come together in unity and support each other. And we can see the same pattern of events happening now, can we not? In some parts of Africa where we're fighting against each other, but we're not seeing the true enemy. We're not fighting against the enemy. We're fighting against each other. We're killing and murdering each other, whilst the enemy within stands by and fuels it. And we'll get to the point again where we will weaken ourselves to the point where we'll, like what happened in even North Africa, where we lost North Africa to the Arabs. There's South Africa, where we could potentially lose that to the Europeans. And then there are other parts of Africa where the French and other European nations are there, you know, settling among us. And there's going to come a time where they will become the invaders and take over, because we even allow them to bring their armies and have their boots on the ground and their army bases on our territory. Complete madness at the moment, but that's because we're not in our right mind. If we were in our right mind, would we allow, you know, the armies of our former invaders and colonizers and enslavers to have, you know, their military posts on our land, on our lands, in our houses, in our homes? You know, it's obvious we're not in our right mind. And so huge amount of work to be done there. Let me go back to our brother Kabbalah. He may well want to respond to some of the remarks that have already been spoken, and he may also want to respond to some of the comments in the chat. I've seen quite a few comments in the chat there. Brother Comrade Kabbalah, let's bring you back in here, my brother.
Thank you very much, Queen, again. Thank you to Professor. Thank you to Capelli for your submission. Yes, I think the question that has been put on table by Professor Antumi, I think it's very important. The question of how do we go about creating that Africa that we want, Africa which is decolonized? How do we proceed even about it? And I feel like the most challenge that we have been facing as African people is that challenge of expecting one day that we'll have a mighty leader who will come and kick all the European out of Africa and then liberate once Africa, and then we are free. And if we don't have such a leader, we will have one day Jesus coming back in the sky and then kick all the white people off Africa and then give us the freedom that we want. And that's the reason why actually we are into religion too much in Africa. When you walk through the streets of Congo or Kinshasa, you find in 1 kilometer about 15 or 20 churches there, because that's what we believe, that one day all the sufferings that we have, all the problems that we have, all the difficulties that we have today will end by prayer and by faith. And we fight and we die, we kill each other for elections that we consider to be democracy, because we believe that we'll have a chance through election to elect a leader who will have the power, will have the solution or all the key solutions to the problems that we face in Africa. Once we elect the leader, all the problems will go away, stuff like that. So this is actually the dominant mindset in Africa. And unfortunately, there's no way that a situation that we are facing today in this 21st century will change through these kind of solutions or this kind of mindset of relying on a supernatural forces somewhere to come and fix the problems, which was created by human beings, or expecting a supernatural leader who will come and then eventually resolve the solution. So the point here is that every civilization is destroyed from outside when it has been weakened from the inside. So literally what I'm trying to say is that the people of Africa, the common people of Africa, have as much responsibility to play in what Africa needs to become, in what has to be done for that decolonization to take place, as the so-called leaders or the elite itself. Because when you understand the situation, not just the situation of Africa, but the situation of the entire world, you see that there's always two perspectives or through two lenses through which we analyze and we interpret the solution, the problems that we're facing. There's a perspective of the elites, and there is also a perspective of the masses. Unfortunately, it has been always the perspective or the viewpoint of the elites which has been dominating the process of solving the problems that we have in the world or in Africa. And when you analyze, the perspective of the elites is only about capitalism, right? It's about what they call stability. And when they say about stability, means the poor must remain poor, the weak must remain weaker, and the situation must continue the way it is. While for the situation to change, we need a massive revolution. And you cannot have this massive revolution if you don't have a people who are knowledgeable, people who are working up, people who understand their situation, and people who are committed to get this situation, obviously, resolved according to their own perspective, their own understanding of the situation, not the elites, but their own situation or analysis of that situation. So this is where the problem is today. So in nutshell, we need how can I put a massive engagement from the people. We need a massive engagement of the African people. The same way that we are waking up in the morning individually, going to our workplaces where we're going to work to cater for ourselves, we need to have the same mindset about what we need to do for Africa to become better. Not just the one we have elected, or we have elected who was pre-selected, not the God, not the angels, not the devil alone, but us as a people who are facing the situation, who are the majority, facing the situation, the harsh situation in Africa. We need to be in the forefront of every solution which needs to bring about change in our lives. And this calls for a different system, which is not a Western democratic system, but a system that I can call, for the lack of a better word, an African inclusive democracy. Look what happened in Africa today. We have a situation whereby we elect people who go into power and they begin to amend some policies that rise riots on streets. It means we have elected a people. We are so-called the majority, or the rulers of a democratic system as the majority, as the people. But the people that we elect, once they go into power, whatever they amend there will always create some kind of tension, some kind of a conflict on the streets. People are protesting because of the laws, of the amendments, created by those people who elect. That means they don't operate with our mindset. They don't work for us. They don't represent us, and we don't have the power because whatever decision they take is against our expectations. So we need a system that gives people the power to approve any solution that is being studied or implemented in the parliaments. Before that solution get to be published, get to be amended, get to be enacted, it must be approved by the majority of the people. And if we get this system in process, we are one step away from getting on how, or getting to respond to the question of how are we going to create a different Africa, or the Africa that we want. Because the situation of today is that our politicians in Africa, for example, are already in the pockets of the transnational capitalist class. These are the people who control the media and the narrative. So they select the politicians and they present those politicians to the masses, and we elect the politicians. So you remember, when you elect somebody, you don't select that person, but the person who selects that somebody, he's the one who gives the mandates. You elect someone based on that person tells you on his marketing project. It tells you that you elect me, I'm going to build the road for you, I'm going to build a bridge for you, and then you elect based on that. However, that person has a mandate or a program which has been given to him by those who fund his campaign. And those are the ones who give the mission to our elected officials. So we don't control the system until we get to we get a parameter that gives us as the people the power to control the system by amending the policies implemented by or started or created by our elected officials in the parliament. Before it get to affect us, we need to have a voice in those policies. Then it can pass. Otherwise, it doesn't have to pass. The same way we do the referendum, right? Yes or no. It's actually the system that can at least respond to the question of how do we get the Africa that we want? Because when we have that system, there will be less power of lobbyists, but there will be more power of the people and the will of the people. And to get to that system working effectively, we need to raise the level of consciousness, the level of knowledge of the masses, because as one of the scholars of the world said in the past, fighting for ignorant people is like self-immolating yourself to light a way to a blind people. So our people are really deep into ignorance which has been normalized today. As I said from the beginning, we are a generation of we are a generation of TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. Knowledge becomes something of abnormality to the people, so that when you have lots of knowledge, you sounds like awkward, so to say. So with this generations becomes difficult even for you to sacrifice yourself, because you know that your sacrifice will be useless. So we need to teach our people, to tell them the mechanisms that are needed to get the nation functioning well and to get the will of the people being respected. So that's how I think we can go about solving the problem that we have today in Africa.
Thank you so much for that, Comrade Kabala. And it's really interesting what you said there. And as you're speaking, I was just also hearing the major challenges that Africa has with the political system that it has. I mean, you outlined there the fact that the political system, you know, is by design not really there to represent the interests of the masses, but represents the interests of the elites and the capitalists and those who have selected the politicians, and obviously those who have selected them are telling them what laws and policy changes they need to be making in the parliament. So they're already one step removed from the masses. So it's a real difficult challenge. In my opinion, I think the electoral system has to be changed. I mean, I like the word you used there to make it more inclusive. I think it was, you said, an African inclusive democracy, one that I call what do they call it here? Proportional representation, where, you know, a system that represents all the different cultural groups within a nation, and you know, each of those cultural groups have the ability to control a proportion of the budget as well. And then, you know, on major issues that cuts across you know, whole regions, there is another layer that is responsible for the development of the country. But again, it goes back to what we was talking about earlier. Can we really even begin to get there if we're not in our right minds? Because if we're not in our right minds, then whoever is selected or elected will not be operating in the interests of us as Africans. So let's go back, you know, so the how is a really difficult one if we're not in our right minds. But yeah, you touched on the political system there, and for me outlined the extent to which it doesn't work for us as Africans. Let me go over to Kapili and bring you in at this stage, my brother, to see if we can, you know, again, continue to talk about the how. We know what doesn't work. We know some of the changes that need to be made. Let's hear your perspective on this, please, my brother.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you very much. I agree with Comrade Atumi. We've been talking about decolonizing for a long period of time. But one thing that we need also to check ourselves whether we have done enough work, you know, to conscientize. Because mine is just to add on what the previous speaker, Comrade Kabbalah, has alluded on. From my own perspective, the how part of it, in order for us to come out of the mess that we see in Africa, we need a massive revolution. And this massive revolution, we need first to understand the structure of the entire Africa or African society, because this is not new. In any society, you know, is made up of two major components. We have a base, which sometimes we call it the economic foundation, the mode of production. This is where we determine which class in the society owns what. And we have another component, which is what we call the superstructure. So this superstructure also is divided into two. We have what we call, on one hand, the repressive state institutions, coercive repressive state institutions, such as the police, such as the army, court, and prison. And on the other hand, we have these ideological repressive state institutions. You mentioned some of them: the education system, you know, the mainstream media, and the religion, and so forth and so on. So what is happening in the structure as a whole? The class that owns the means of production, you know, in our context in Africa, the capitalists, because if you go back into the history, whether our countries managed to gain independence, so that was a political, something like a political freedom, you know, the departure of white people from our parliaments, you know, our various government institutions, they were replaced by African technocrats. But they did not relinquish economic power. So this is the problem here. So which class now owns, we know. And then one thing that we need to know here, that the ideas of the ruling class are the ideas, you know, that control, the society. So what is happening? The class that owns the means of production, so the base itself, it influences the superstructure. So if we have a capitalist model of production or economy, obviously we will have the state institutions that will protect the interests of that particular class. Obviously we will have the education system that will propagate the belief and the ideas of that class. We will have churches that will continue to give people opium, to postpone the suffering of the people, to say that no, don't worry, the problems that you see today, you shall see them no more. There is life after death. There is a better life there. So that's a part of the system. So why I said the how part of it, the massive revolution, once we have identified that the problem, it's about here, the mind, how can we now, liberate that mind? We liberate that mind when we start engaging with the masses. We start organizing community meetings with the masses, trying to negate the negation, making sure that we give them a quality information, that will make them to be aware about their socioeconomic conditions. Because sometimes when we attend our church gathering, all the problems that you see, whether social, economic, we normally blame devil. So that is part of that opium. So to make sure that we are diverted from the realities, so these are man-made problems that need a man-made solution. And the solution, we don't need to rely on the leaders, as brother Comrade Kabbalah has put it correctly. So these leaders, they've been selected somewhere. They are carrying two mandates. When they are on the election campaign trail, they'll speak what the masses want. We'll give you houses, we'll create jobs, we'll give you this. But when they go to these centers of powers, say, no, don't worry about that message. We spoke what people they wanted to hear. But our position on economy, the austerity measure will be there. We'll ensure that we privatize this and that and that. So how can we now liberate ourselves once our mind already liberated? We know the reality. These are the problem. So we need now to go and organize the people who've been dispossessed from the land, the people whom for them to live, they will have to sell their labor power. So those are the people that they need to be organized: workers, the unemployed people, the marginalized people, any type of social stratification that has been marginalized and oppressed and exploited by the class that owns the means of production. We need to organize them. We need to mobilize them. We need to educate them. It is a continuous process. When the masses now will be aware and become conscious enough, then the leaders will emerge, from the same masses, because now they will understand when pastor is coming to them and say that, no, your problem is devil. They will be able to say that our problem is because of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let us organize ourselves. Let us, whatever, push a struggle that will end about this suffering. So this is what is lacking now. The objective factor of the revolution are already there. The sufferings that we see in Africa, the poverty, the unemployment, the inequality, and so forth and so on. What is lacking is the subjective factors. An organization now will coordinate, an organization that will agitate, aggravate, educate, and mobilize and lead the oppressed people to a struggle that will end whatever we are facing once and for all. Africa is so well endowed with all kind of natural resources, and then we have no business in hosting poverty, unemployment, and what. So this is where you can link even to the concept of democracy, that for us is a fallacy. When you go to the dictionary, you look at the concept itself, a government of the people, for the people, by the people. But you ask yourself a question: the people here are governing, why the people are poor? So automatically it will tell you that no, this is a bourgeoisie democracy. This is a procedural democracy. It is not inclusive and substantive democracy that delivers, whatever people they want to see and on the ground. So the how part of it, it's for us to take a U-turn. We must stop serving now the leadership, because in Africa we've been worshiping leaders. You're not gonna, this is my leader, this is my cadre, this is what. These cadres are part and parcel of the problem. They've been captured by the system. And once they're captured, these leaders, they cannot advance a struggle or that will, deliver people from whatever problems that we are facing. But I believe when people organize, when people are conscientized, when people are organized, and we will have now that force that we can use, to change whatever is happening. So we understand very well that there are a lot of strategies that are used by the enemy, because the class that owns the means of production is the minority. Their survival depend on disunity, disuniting the masses. They use the mainstream media, they use all kind of things to ensure that there are issues that are dividing us, issues of xenophobia, whatever. And what currently you can see what is happening in Tunisia. The president himself is overwhelmed by the socio-economic problems that his own people are facing. So in order to deviate the real issue, now you put the issue of immigrant there, so it becomes a scapegoating. So all those things, they divide our people. So when we go to our communities, starting identifying all these elements that are dividing us, elements that are used by the enemies of the working class or the African people in general. So then people, they become clear that it's not about my neighbor. It's not about whether you are Congolese, Zimbabweans, Angolians, whatsoever. It's about this. Well, we must be able to separate our petty struggle from our fundamental struggle. Our fundamental struggle is to liberate Africa, not only politically, but economically as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kapele. Very well said and put indeed. And, therein lies, from what you said, from my perspective as well, the key to the solution there, the conscientization of us as a people. And then you said from that, the masses that have been conscientized, from there, the leaders, the true leaders will emerge. And you talked about the need for us to organize as a people, but on the other hand, you also mentioned that they're organized in terms of their forces, their police forces, their military forces, their court system, their prison systems, their education systems. So we can see what we're up against. And so the rise of one leader, maybe we've seen that in the late 50s, 60s, and we can see what happens if it's just one leader that emerges to be the one that's going to bring about the revolutionary change that's needed on behalf of the people. So I think the masses themselves, we need to have everyone as leaders. I mean, everyone with the vision. If we've all got the same vision and we're all on the same mission, and we're all driving towards the change that we want to see, then it might be more difficult to stop, a million, people moving forward. It'll be far more difficult than it is to maybe identify one person that they can take out and then the whole movement collapses, which is what we experienced in the late 50s, early 60s when, our revolutionary fathers came in as the leaders. So, I agree with what Kabbalah and yourself were saying in terms of the leadership system just not working for us as Africans and us needing a new system entirely. Let me go over to Brother Ntumi, who spends a lot of time thinking about these issues, and so may well be able to offer some solutions to the same question that he posed, which is the how. Do we get the Africa that we want to see?
Okay, thank you very much. This is the moment in which some people will be upset with me, but I don't care. No problem. I'm those who believe that I do have the responsibility to tell my people what is wrong and what is right. So I'm not ready to join any revolution that has to do with color of skin. I'm not into that. I'm into the African revolution. And African means if you're African, irrespective of your appearance, I will accept you. That's my point of view. And all these ideas of expelling the whites or expelling the Arabs etc., will not bring any solution to our situation. That's totally that's totally wrong. That's totally wrong, because the problem is that the minds, not the bodies, is the minds. The problem is in the minds. Once somebody is white supremacist, he can be a black white supremacist. So we are fighting against white and Arab supremacy in the African continent. And believe me, many light-skinned Africans who have been living in the African continent for generations, they also do reject Arab and white supremacy. And I know them, and I speak to them. I know them. Most especially in the north of Africa, there's a movement of Amazites that do reject the Arab supremacy that is in place in the north of Africa. And they very much consider themselves Africans as other Africans with different colors, shapes, or whatever. So this racial construct is something also from the colonizers. They were the creators of the races. That's important for us to know. We want to get rid of the European culture and Arab culture in our African continent, but we do not realize that the race question is also a European thing and an Arab thing. In our societies, this was non-existent. Non-existent. In fact, we do produce in our African continent, we do produce people from all types of shades, including albinos. These are the origins of the white, light-skinned populations on the planet Earth. As a historian, I can tell you, yes, of course, originally all mankind was black. Yes, that's for sure. But we are not in that 45,000 years ago. We are not in that time. We are in the present time. We are in the present time in which there are various types of peoples in this planet Earth, not only whites and blacks, also Chinese people, peoples from Asia with all types of shades, colors, etc. So our revolution should not be based on that, please. Our revolution should be based on the best to create the better conditions for Africa and to create a better future for all Africans, irrespective of the appearance. Who is going to decide who is white or black? Imagine if I have a child, my kids are black because I was married to an African woman. But if my kids are lighter than me, so they are not African, and me, I am into the middle, I am African. Who is going to decide that? In South Africa, there was a policy of the paper bag. Do you know that policy? The paper bag. Once you have the color of the paper bag, you are black. If you don't have the color of the paper, that's ridiculous. Are we going to build that type of Africa with those ideas? Were the ideas of the colonizers, in fact. These are in our original societies. This wasn't in place. This wasn't in place. So there is an circulating idea that we are being diminished, that our population is being reduced by the policies of the new colonizers. And of course, these policies existed. Yes, there were some policies trying to introduce some sicknesses in our African populations for us not to grow, etc. But this has bring to a failure because the black populations in Africa are growing like any other population in planet Earth. Just look at the statistics. So we are not in fear of disappearance. There's no fear in disappearance. So we can live along with white people who consider themselves Africans as long as they are not racist. And if they are racist, we should not expel them from the African continent. We should jail them, because they will be under the African laws. And the African laws should be laws that prevent racism. So once we create a society in which racism is forbidden, those people will not be expelled. They will be jailed. They will be jailed because that would be a crime. And easy. It's like that. If they are Africans, they should face African laws. They should accept African laws. And one of our African laws should be fully anti-racist. These biological ideas of superiority, inferiority. Now, there is a group of people in the United States. let me tell you, the conditions in our African continent have little to do with the conditions in the United States. First of all, our brothers and sisters are fighting against the oppressors who are also Black Africans in most countries. And we know this very well. Let's face the reality, because we need to face the reality in order to change things. I've seen Black brothers punishing physically other Black brothers in our continent. Workers, slashing workers. This is a common practice in some countries nowadays. And this has nothing to do with white supremacy, etc. This is a common practice nowadays. People working in domestic service. I don't know if you call it like that in English. People working in houses. They are very, very much mistreated in several countries. And this has nothing to do with white supremacy. This has to do with our inequalities in our continent. So we must face our inequalities. And then we must face the white supremacy and the Arab supremacy, Chinese supremacy, whatever supremacy. But I am not against any Chinese person, white person, or whoever who comes to the African continent to bring something. If that person is coming to our continent to bring something, to help us build, to do win-win businesses, I'm okay with that person. I'm not afraid of any person in planet Earth. But it seems that some brothers and sisters are like they are afraid of white people. I say, no, kill them, expel them, please. In the African continent, is like about 85% to 90% of the peoples are peoples to be considered to be called Black everywhere. But there is like between 10 and 15% of the peoples who are Semitic peoples or Arab peoples or light-skinned people or even white peoples. What are we going to do with them? To kill them? To expel them? I'm not into that, please. We don't need that. We need a revolution of the minds. Then we change the mindset even of those white peoples living in Africa. There will not be supremacists anymore. And if they are supremacists, there will be laws to punish them. No need to expel them. Imagine there are some people in Europe, calling to expel all non-white peoples from Europe. And we are fighting against this. And we want to do this in our continent. No, please. What are we going to do with America? America belongs to the Native Americans. I'm a person of Native American background too. So what are we going to do? All whites and all mixed peoples and all blacks also from United States should go away, because that land belongs to the Native Americans. And this is for sure, that it belongs to the Native Americans. But we are not going to do this, because we are living in a world in which we need to have relationships with each one. But to build a state, a nation, we should create a mental frame in which each of its citizens is committed to the liberation and strengthening of that nation. If you're white, I don't have any problem. In the ANC, there were whites. In the Umkhonto weSizwe in South Africa, there were whites. Some of them, there were whites. I met some whites in Europe that are fighting for migrants' rights, and some of them even got jailed because of that. So are you going to kill or expel a person like that? No. I'm not into that revolution. I'm into the revolution of bettering the world. Through bettering Africa, we will better the world. So I'm very sure that many Afrocentric brothers and sisters are against this. And they may believe that I am such type of person who does not believe that the African continent belongs to the black peoples. Of course, the whole herd originally was only black. The whole herd. I know this very well. I'm not against this idea. But now we are in this present century, and there are millions and hundreds of millions. I'm not talking about only millions, hundreds of millions. Look at the Chinese population, 1.5 billion. Our population, 1.5 billion. Arabs, no less than half a billion, etc., etc. Europeans, 1 billion. So what are we going to do? Are we going to create an international racial warfare? No. Please, let's be serious. I want to build an Africa that will be strong, anti-racist, in which every person, irrespective of his color, can strive, can prosper, can show his best. So please, I'm sorry, I'm being very passionate. This is because I'm contaminated by the Spaniards who are like that. Everybody knows.
Thank you very much, Brother Intumi, for your views and your perspectives there. Oh, yes, I think you just opened up, a really interesting discussion there. You said I might not like some of what you had to say, but, it's about us having the conversation. Can we as Africans, live peacefully among white people? I mean, what is the track record? What does our history show us? What does our history tell us where we've allowed white people to come and live among us? You said yourself, Brother Antumi, we were, as Africans everywhere, we were the majority people in Europe. We allowed white people to come and settle among us. Look what happened to us in Europe. We were the majority people in America. Those who they described as the Indians with the feathers from eyewitness accounts were basically described as either Negroes, black, or Africans. So we know the original so-called Indians and people of the Americas, the natives of the Americas, the originals were African there as well. Look what happened when we allowed the white people to come and settle among us and live peaceably among us. Ultimately, they became the invaders and they committed genocide and wiped us almost totally off the face of the earth in all of these places where we were. Are we not to learn from history? Are we to allow them to come and live among us again? We allow them to come in and join us in and settle among us. Well, actually, they were the invaders in the north of Africa. And look where we are today now. Africa in the north has been lost to those who call themselves Arabs, who are basically just mixed race people, lost to those people who have this supremacy ideology. Look what's happening in Tunisia, a part of Africa where, which once belonged to the Carthaginians, the Africans, now has been overrun by a group of people who don't even want the indigenous people living among them. Look what happened to the indigenous people of Australia when they allowed, the Europeans to come in and live among them there. Do we not learn from history? I love, your idealism and the utopia. It's wonderful. And of course, there are some white people who will fight alongside us, but the reality is that it's their people who are in control and it's their people who are causing the problems and our demise wherever we are in the world. I mean, I agree that as Africans at one time, we never used to see color, hence why we allowed people from all different parts of the world to come and live among us. But then what do? They bring their ideologies and they indoctrinate our people, and then we end up fighting each other. We can see it in South Africa today. So to what extent should race not be a factor? When we look at our history, it tells us the reverse, my brother, that race, has a lot to do with everything. And so can racism really ever be erased? You've opened up, you've posed a number of questions there that I think would require a show in its own right. But yes, I mean, I'm clear where I stand. I feel that we as Africans, and to what you said, the extent to what you said about, us being able to have a fair and just society where non-Africans can live among us, I think is true. Our history has proven that, we can manage and run such societies. But today we're not in control. Today, even where it may appear that some of our African leaders are in control, we've heard from panel representatives that the extent to which they've been manipulated by the elite and ruling classes and those who have selected them and put them in positions. And so for as long as the Europeans are in control, can we really have a better world? Or do we really need us as Africans to take back our rightful positions so that we can be the rulers and controllers of the world, the ones who protect the environment, the ones who protect the animal kingdom, the ones who protect, the marine life, the ones who are least likely to cause destruction to the world and the planet? Is the world waiting on us? Is the planet waiting on us to take back our rightful place so that we can stop the destruction that is happening on so many levels? Diseases, wars, plagues, chemical warfare, biological seeds and plants that is just devastating the land. We need to, in my opinion, take back our rightful place of control so that we can create the society that you described there, my brother, because I believe once we are in control, we can have that sort of society that you talk about, because it's in our humanity to create such societies. We've been around the panel. I'm going to go over to the chat now, the audience, and I'm going to bring in some of our questions, and then we're going to have some quick fire responses from our panel members. Okay, let me just jump in here. First time, agree, Sister Shanice, rise up, thank you. Organic African paradigm, it says, the one who comes in peace is always welcome. Brother Kwame Ossi says, this Anam is a plant with his Ashewo wife. Oh, I don't know what that one is. This one, positive and creation energy to all. Okay, I think I need to read some of these before I bring it in. So while I'm having a read to try and find one or two points from the chat that I can bring in for us to respond to, let's allow Brother Kabbalah to come back in and respond to some of the points that Brother Kapila and Brother Antumi and myself has made since the last time you spoke. Welcome back, my brother. Kabbalah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Queen. It's quite interesting. The one thing I want to say is that every time an African person says that for us to get what we want as African people, for us to change our situation, we need to work together with other people. In other words, we need to close our eyes on race, on color, on all those things, is because deep in our minds, being already damaged by centuries of colonialism or slavery, we believe that we cannot do on our own what we are supposed to do, or what we have always wanted other people to do for us. And that's the reason why we embrace, or we think that is only through multiculturalism that we'll be able to solve our problems. However, what did Marcus Garvey say? Marcus Garvey said that the attitudes of specifically white men is to dominate, to subjugate and oppress other people who are weak that he comes in contact with. So the challenge is not about working with other people or other colors, but the problem is that other colors have always taken advantage of of Africa, in so to say. In other words, when we have organizations or whatever associations that we have with all those people, even though they are the minorities, they've always wanted to be in control of those organizations and then guide them according to their own ideology. And don't forget this, Africa is the basket of the world. As Dr. John Henry Clark told us, that Africa is the richest land in the world. And Africa has things that many people want and they cannot do without, and they've never wanted to pay for. Therefore, they will always find an excuse to invade Africa. What does this say? It says that, what does this tell us? It simply tells us that the rise of Africa is the demise economically of Europe, more specifically France, which does not have mineral resources, depending on 500 billion US dollars that is ripping out of Africa every year, right? And we know that the current standards of European countries is built on the free labor of slave people who were taken out of Africa, which is actually the foundation of the first industrial capitalist society in Europe. So it has been like that. The system has been maintained in that way through the exploitation of African resources, which Europe by itself determined the price of those resources, right? And Africa still languishing in poverty, even though we have all these resources, this reality. So this tells us that once we rise to take control of our resources, it's going to be a lock on European economic standards, and it's going to be a demise of certain European countries who depend on African exploitation, right? So there's no way that the people who depend on your exploitation will be teaming up with you to create solutions that are really sustainable to solve your problems. This is totally impossible. That is why Marcus Garvey said, put race first because everything is about race, whether you like it or not. And Mr. John, his name is the Fuller Jr. He's an American author. He said something very important. He said, if you don't understand racism, how it works, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think you understand will only confuse you. I mean, this reality, everything is about race. And what race is, white supremacy is reality, right? And there's no way you will talk about black supremacy next to white supremacy, because there can only be one supremacy. It's either white supremacy or black supremacy. As far as I know, it is white supremacy. So there's no way that a black supremacy can come and then do the same effects, that devastating effects that we are facing or experiencing about white supremacy. Now, I want to point something else about the leaders. Brother Atumi said that we have leaders, we have African people who are being oppressed by African leaders, people who are black. I mean, that is true. But the question is, what is the industry that produced those leaders who are oppressing other black people? And this is not something of today. We know in the past, when the Portuguese came to Congo, right, they obliged the king of Congo to be Christianized, to be baptized and to become a Christian. It was King Zinga, if I'm not mistaken, and it became Alphonse II, right? And even though he got baptized, he became a Christian because he saw the danger already, to protect his people. These people started not taking even his nieces, even his cousins, into captivity. And then he tried to protest, to write a letter to the king of Spain of Portugal, to tell him, okay, I'm Christian now, how come you taking my people? He was even forced, was obliged, if you protest, we're going to even take you yourself to prison. So what I'm trying to say is that we have a situation in Africa whereby our leaders are facing a permanent danger of being assassinated, of being blackmailed, of being blacklisted, when they try to oppose the agenda of the Western society. We know what happened to Thomas Sankara. We know what happened to Kwame Nkrumah. We know what happened to all these leaders who didn't want to oppress their people. They ended up being killed, being excluded, being shut down in different ways. And for you to be, to exercise your mandate as a leader in Africa, you need to compromise according to the current system and standards. You need to compromise, to the rights and the needs of your people to supply to the needs of the oppressor, who are the European people, right? So if you don't do that, you get killed. And that's the reason why you have some leaders who are black but oppressing black people, because they are working on the agenda of the Western society. And this is something that we cannot ignore. It has been documented everywhere on the continent, right? As I said from the beginning, that we have a system that's pre-select the leaders that we are electing. We only elect the people that have been pre-selected with a specific mandates, but we don't give mandates. When I'm going to elect my president or my deputy, I don't give him my mandate. I don't give him a mandate. I don't tell him that, okay, I'm electing you, you're going to do A, B, C. No, I just elect a person that has been pre-selected by the international capitalist system. So we are living in a reality that sometimes we try to ignore for some reasons, of course. But me, as a revolutionary Pan-Africanism, I believe that my revolution is first and foremost about my people. And when I'm able to serve my people, then I can jump on to serve the whole world. I don't have a mandate to serve the whole world while my people are still languishing in poverty, in a precarity, in a miserable condition created by the Western society. Therefore, I don't have a mandate to serve Western society. And I don't think that there's any solution that European can come up with that will solve my problem, because the same tree that produce mango cannot produce avocado. If you want to move from eating mango to eat avocado, you must plant another tree, another seed, and then live another reality. So if we want to find a solution to the problem of Africa, we need to disintoxicate ourselves from the European mindset and the system of thinking and of looking at the world, which is all based on destruction, war, and oppression of the people who are weaker, to create our own system that is based on Ubuntu as a culture of African people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Comrade Kabbalah, for that. I have to agree with everything that you said there as well. We do need to deintoxicate ourselves from the cancer of colonialism, which, as you said, is based on destruction, war, evil, wickedness, and we can go on from our experiences. Plenty of comments coming in the chat there. Sorry, I can't keep up with them all as well. First time has just said, it's based on destroying the morality of society. That's what he said. There was Icon Bay saying, Icon Bay is saying that all African leaders are working for the so-called white and not the African people. And the same African people are not doing anything about it, but keep blaming everyone else. Natural Mystic is reminding us of when Africa, when the Congo had Leopold as a leader, and that was mentioned earlier as well, and what, how he conducted himself. He was chopping off the limbs of our brothers and sisters in the Congo. Another reminder, of the rurality for us of having, turning a blind eye to color, so to speak. And we're not saying that blacks can't be wicked to themselves. We are only too aware of the wars that we've waged against each other prior to colonialism and imperialism. But by no way was it the extent to which we suffered at the hands of the Europeans. We just have to remember enslavement as well, almost 500 years of enslavement there. Let's see what Kwame Aboje is saying. He says he's referring to Brother Kwame. He said, Brother Kwame Ossi, did you get my... Oh, sorry, no, that's... What's Marilyn B saying? Africa is not a child that needs help. It's the mind of the people that needs to stand up and take what is theirs, and that the people job, and that the people's job is, it's the job of the people and not the job of the leader. So Marilyn saying is that, it's those African people that need to stand up, take back their mind. Obviously, they can't stand up if they don't realize that they're flat on their faces, praying to a God that's never going to come and save them, looking outside of themselves for a savior when they really need to be looking inside themselves. Watching the Hawk is touching on what you were saying, Brother Kabelia, about African leaders who are controlled by outsiders. And he says, exactly, Zambian president was also threatened by American Treasury Secretary Yellen against having a relationship with China. Our wonderful Magafuli's name was mentioned in the chat as well. He wanted to, disassociate himself from the policies of the Europeans and take and adopt an inward-looking way of developing his country, and look what happened to him. So much more we can say on this topic. Let's go back now. We just heard from Brother Kabbalah. Whose turn is it? Is it Brother Kepele or Brother Ntumi? Brother Kepele, you've not spoken since Brother Ntumi spoke. Let's hear from you, my Brother Kepele. Kapelia.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me start with what Comrade Atumi has alluded. I agree with him 100% on the revolution of mind. Yeah, that's I agree with you, brother, 100%. But after that revolution of mind, what next? Because remember, our struggle is about liberating ourselves from the shackles of poverty, unemployment, inequalities, and all these other social ills that you see across the continent. And then we know that these problems that I'm talking, they were designed. These are not God-made problems. As I said earlier on, our continent is so well endowed, and we have no business in hosting poverty in Africa. We have no business in hosting unemployment. it shows you that there is an invisible hand, that is pulling the string from behind. So after that revolution of mind, when we have won the war of position, we have positioned ourselves in that space of dominance. Now we are able to articulate and advance the interests of the oppressed people, the exploited people in this continent. Then there is another step of standing up and take over what rightfully belongs to us, which is the economy itself. When you look at the way Africa has been structured, it has been structured in the way that it continues, feeding the Western industries. We only export raw materials. We are not industrializing in Africa. It's something that has been designed. So if you go back to 1963, the Lagos Plan of Development, where African leaders, they decided to come together and, present, a model of development of this continent. It has been rejected by the IMF and World Bank for a particular reasons, because they knew, as Comrade Kabbalah has put it correctly, the moment this continent, controls its economy, there are countries in Europe that are going to collapse. The sufferings that you see here in Africa will shift from here to there, because it is a fact. We are saying what is there. We are not thumb sucking here. This is the reality. So our struggle here, number one, is all of us, we have agreed, is now to decolonize the mind of an African child, just to understand these realities and just to go to the roots, to the causes of the problem itself. And then by then you cannot just know the problem and you say that, no, now I'm conscious enough, I've been decolonized now, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, let us end the struggle here. So we need to eat. We need to put bread and butter on the table. So we want to participate in the mainstream economy that the majority of African people have been excluded. So that is the struggle. So we are not saying that we are here to discriminate, but we need to gain that political power, economic power, and military power in this continent, which we do not have. The political power that we have is also controlled. So there are people who are pulling the string from behind. Leaders are pre-selected before they're elected by us. That is why I said we have a purely procedural democracy. You just go stand there to elect a leader who's been pre-selected already. A leader will come with the mandate that, people want to hear. Yes, I'll build the house, I'll build this, I'll build that. But on the other hand, there is another mandate of Bretton Woods institutions that are telling the leader, we need to privatize, we need to do this, we need to do that. So this is the reason why I said the how part of it. Now it's about the masses. The people, once they've been, liberated mentally, then they understand their problems. Now they say that, no, my problem is not, a Congolese and what. It's not about this tribe. It's not about this tribe. All these things are artificial divisions that are created to ensure that we are divided so that we can be controlled in a way that we won't be able to come together and stand up and take what rightfully belongs to us. That is the struggle for an African child. We cannot continue, to praise poverty that we see while we have everything that can address all this problem. But that small group of people that control our means of production, they are vowed not to allow us to enjoy, the benefit of what we have. This is the reason why leaders who have stood their ground to challenge them, they've been physically removed. Examples were given, the Kwame Nkrumahs of this world, the Thomas Sankara. Recently, we have the whole Dr. Pombe Magufuli. So it's still a conspiracy theory, but from the look of things, we know that when he started challenging, the vaccine economy, so he became a target of the system itself. So this is what is happening. For how long should we continue to live in this misery? For how long should we continue to sit and wait for a Messiah? So this is the time that we need to amplify our effort on the ground, to mobilize, to organize and educate and conscientize our people so that we have power to change this thing. And that this is the time. And then if we don't do that, we will continue talking poverty, we'll develop analysis of poverty, and we become povertricians. So we need to end this. And that this is the time. We can see in other African countries, the youth now, they are realizing that no, all these things are not working. Because number one, the colonial project was physical as well as spiritual and psychological. So you are talking about the psychological part of it and spiritual part of it, which I agree with you. But now we need to move to the second stage, the economy, because these people, they are not going to allow us. It's like someone who's been, controlling a particular table, and then you also want to come and enter in that particular space. Before that particular person give you that space, he will have to fight you. So this is what we see in Africa. Any leader who tries to challenge the structure of the economy, it's either you get killed, it's either you be, the mainstream media, they will put your name in the mud up until people, they say that no, this one, he doesn't know what he wants. So I agree with you, we need to start there with the mind, but we don't need to stop there, but we need to move forward. We need to use the power, because people who are united cannot be defeated. So the problem that we are facing in Africa, we are divided. And these divisions, we can see, you go to Tunisia, they say, no, these are black migrants, these are what and what. All those things, our leaders who are part and parcel of the problem, they continue to perpetuate the divisions that work in favor of those who control our means of production, those who control our land, those who control our wealth. But it's up to us, as I said, we need to go back to the people who have power, conscientize them, make them understand, and how can we achieve this? Without that, we'll continue talking about poverty in Africa, we'll talk about corruption, we'll continue to talk about all these things, but the problem is not there. There's someone who's pulling the string behind, and those people now, they are known. So this generation now, it's ready to take the bull on its own. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Kapili there as well. It's time for change. What happened to Thomas Sankara, they're saying in the chat. Who killed Patrice Lumumba? White people, should we continue down that road? Who wiped out the Aborigines? We're not going back. Africans can never forgive white people who never apologized for the enslavement and never paid reparations. We're 8 minutes away from the top of the hour. I want to give our brother Ntumi at least 5 of those 8 minutes to come back. We might have to go over just a little bit to get everybody to sum up. But I think the people in the chat will hang with us if we go over a little bit. Brother Ntumi, you caused quite a stir there with the position that you hold. You've heard the response. You've seen some of the comments in the chat. What say you now?
I wish I would have more time. English is not my mother tongue also, and I need to express myself in various aspects.
We will invite you back. We will invite you back.
But I will go quick to some questions. First of all, I'm totally 100% aware on the European and Arab oppression over Africa. I'm totally aware. I know what they did. I know about enslavement. I know about colonizing. I know about the neo-colonization. And now I know about the killings of our leaders, the good leaders. I know about all this. Of course. I'm not setting any doubt on this. I'm 100% sure that Europeans have been oppressing Africa to its limits, and also Arabs did. So I know this very well. I'm beyond that. I've been studying this since I was a kid of 12 years old. So this for me is something that I already know very well. So that's not the point. The brother pointed out that those people claiming that we should cooperate with whites do believe that black people are incapable. No, I'm not that type. I know black people are capable of whatever in this planet Earth. Sending somebody to the moon, colonizing Mars, or whatever. We are capable of everything. I don't believe such things. I don't think any human group is inferior to any other. So we have all capabilities. We have the capabilities for the good and for the bad too. Not only for the good, also for the bad. We can do war and we can kill ourselves, and we know this very well. And not always it is because of white people. Not always. In our African past, before Europeans were in the African continent, there were also wars. And this is normal and natural human behavior in the whole planet Earth. And we are humans, so we behave like humans. Sometimes we do war. Sometimes we do harms ourselves. So it's not that I think that we are incapable of this or that. It's just that I'm 100% sure that we do have the full capabilities of a human being for the good and for the bad. So we must be conscious of that, because in a future, Africa will be prosperous, strong, and powerful. I'm fully aware of that. And when Africa is prosperous and powerful, I'm not going to support anyone telling to kill 200 million people within the African continent on the racial perspectives, or expel 200 million people in the African continent on the racial perspective. So I don't think we need the racial thing to be powerful. That's the only thing. But not because I do consider a specific group, like name it black, name it white, name it whatever, inferior or superior or whatever. I'm against all type of superior ideas, inferior ideas based on race. Let me tell you, let me read something very quick. That person said, the fullest intellectual rubbish ever invented by man is that of racial superiority and inferiority. Who said that? Who said that? Was it a white man? No, it was Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said that. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said something that which is very important, and I know it very much from the Latin American fight also, because I'm connected to the Latin American fight. He says, race is a social construct. It's not biological, it's social. It's social. And you can claim pride of your race, yes, of course, as long as you are oppressed. But once you are the strong one, you cannot claim that, because you will be the oppressor. And that's why I'm saying white supremacy nowadays exists, and white supremacy is controlling the whole world. I agree with that. But I'm not going to change white supremacy with black supremacy, Chinese supremacy, Indian supremacy, or whatever supremacy. Every powerful peoples in this planet Earth wants to be the supreme ones. Okay, so I don't envision that type of world. I envision a type of world in which every African that fights for Africa, that considers himself African, that really is giving something to the African continent and giving to the society, should be considered an African. Was Gaddafi a black man? I don't think so. If you bring Gaddafi to any country in the world, they will say he was an Arab or even white. If you bring Gaddafi to Central Africa, people will call him Oibo, will call him white, you know. But Gaddafi was a strong, committed freedom fighter, and helping to the extent that he was killed. To the extent that he was killed. So I'm into a different type of mindset. I don't see this question like some people may believe, that I see that we black peoples, we are incapable, so that's why we need whites. No, even if there were no whites in this planet Earth, we will prosper. I'm very sure. But the fact is that there are whites in this planet. There are Asians. There are other peoples in this planet, and we should establish relations with them. Okay? I'm not going to change our present situation to a future situation in which there were genocide, wars, problems. Do you think that wars against Arabs will bring us something good? No. We must try to find a way to be powerful enough not to have that type of wars. Look at Europeans. If we think that Europeans only do oppress ourselves, it's totally wrong. Europeans kill themselves even more. Look at the First World War, Second World War. These were ethnic European wars, and they were killing themselves. You understand? So it's a dynamics of human populations. Once you have the wrong ideas, you will start creating genocide, you will start creating war, you will start creating bad conditions for population. And I don't think our brothers or sisters of the working class do need more wars. What we need is prosperity, building. As the brother Capella said, economy is the second step. Yes, first step, change our mindset. Secondly, go to build a strong economy for ourselves. Yes, for the prosperity of our kids, etc., etc. Are we going to build a strong Africa by isolating ourselves from the rest of the world? Please. Chinese people are doing things, and they are copying here and there, and they are looking the best options to prosper. And everyone is doing like that. Are we going to isolate ourselves, just look at ourselves, not looking at the rest of the world, not having businesses with anyone in the planet Earth? No, this is that doesn't make real sense. So I'm not an utopianist. I'm a realist. I'm a realist. The reality is we are living in a world with different races, different peoples, and we must find the way to cooperate in order to everyone to be prosperous. Of course, I'm aware that white populations have been oppressing black populations in the planet Earth like nothing like that has been seen before. I know this very well. And this has not only started with the European expansion, also in India, the Aryans in India, in Central Asia. I know all this story. I'm a historian. I know this very well. So it's not about that. It is about what are we going to do from now on? Are we going to put Africa in an international war, racial war? Are we going to do that? No, I'm against that. I want every family. I don't want to send kids to a racial war. I don't want to send my kids to a racial war. I don't want that. I want every African kid to prosper, to study, to have better conditions, to have food, to have housing, to have jobs, decent jobs, well-paid jobs. That's what I want. Okay, so I don't think through war, and much less through racial war, we will achieve that. Of course, if we suffer aggressions, we must defend ourselves. So I believe in being wise, to have strong army in case Africa is being recolonized or something, we will defeat them. I agree on that. But this doesn't mean that I'm ready to engage in an internal African war against those who have light skin or whatever. Very briefly, in 1 minute, let me tell you, there was so much hate in some of the comments. No problem. I'm ready to die for this because I know this is the best for our African continent. I'm ready to die for this. No problem. Some people are saying, no, because my father was white, etc., etc. Let me tell you, my father died when I was very young, so I barely met him. I grew up with my mother. She was a very, very committed, a very proud black woman. And all my friends were black in general, etc. So that's my environment. But I will never support anything that harms other human being based on his features, physical features. That's my point of view. That's what I'm saying. I don't support harming anyone based on his physical features. But if someone wants to harm us, yes, we do have the right to defend ourselves. I'm not saying that we don't have the right. Yes, we do have that right. But we cannot attack first just because we think that something is going to happen, and maybe we are 100% wrong in that perspective. Okay, so that's my point of view. I am a defender of human rights, and please don't tell me that human rights is a European thing. I've read about the Korukan Fuga in Mali Empire, and the Mali Empire also was among the first ones to talk about human rights. And concerning antiquity, African antiquity, Egyptians had wars against other Africans. And this was much before the creation of white supremacy. Okay, so please let's be serious in the analysis of our history and our capabilities, etc., etc. But we are not in our continent. More than 150 million people are non-black. We're not going to kill them. No, we're not going to expel them. And if this type of racial war is going to be performed, these consequences will be fatal, would be horrible for our continent. So that's what I'm saying when I say I don't support these neo black supremacy ideas that are being created. Of course, they are not being in place because we do not have the supremacy. But one day we will have the supremacy, And I don't want us to think like that. We won't do no good to our population. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry for
Thank
my.
you so much. Thank you. We heard all your passion
Can
coming
I
out.
interject?
Brother Kapili, I'll bring you in just a moment. I just want to bring in one or two comments from the chat. And, our brother Antumi there was saying that we need to cooperate with white people and other nationals in the world. We can't shut ourselves up as Africans, can we? And just, do business among ourselves. Can we not do that, family? Are we not already in a race war? Someone was asking, and what's Roger saying? Can we not cooperate after we've closed ranks and sorted ourselves out first? Is that not what the Chinese did, I would add? But let me go over to Capelle for some closing remarks, and then Brother Kabbalah, Brother Otumi, we thank you so much for coming and sharing your perspective. We will invite you back. Someone in the chat was saying, yes, we must have you back, and we need to have more time to have the discussion around race. To what extent is race a factor in the liberation of us as Africans? So that will be a really interesting discussion to have with your involvement, our brother and Sumi. Brother Kapile, let's have you back.
Yes, I wanted just to add something on what Comrade Atumi has alluded on. Comrade, let me put things into perspective. The economic landlords who have been enjoying the wealth of this continent, whether you like it or not, they will never give our economy or our resources on a silver platter. So, and the moment you start challenging them, they will react. And when they are reacting, this is where you'll see the war that people are talking here. It's not going to be a easy walk in the park, because that is the survival. So if we take over our economy, then as Kabbalah was saying, it will be the demise of some of the European countries. So in terms of collaboration, there is no country that can divorce itself, or a continent divorce itself from the rest of the world. But that cooperation must be at equal footing. It must be at a win-win. So it's not like what is happening today, where a lot of policies, we don't develop policies in this continent. All these economic policies are coming from far outside. The inflation targeting policy, even our people in the village, they don't understand what is inflation targeting policy. So all these things that they are talking, they are not there. So the war, it's not like we are saying that people are going to take weapons and just go and start shooting people. No, it's when people start demanding, the socialist demand, because in order to address poverty in this continent, we'll need to nationalize our mines. We need to take over our means of production. And the economic landlords, they won't give us that opportunity. They will fight back. And by fighting back, this is where that war will come, because we cannot continue any longer to stretch out the suffering of our people. Our people are suffering. So something has to be done. And that thing is not going to be by us sitting here, take 365 days of fasting and prayer. We believe in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Those who control this means of production, they relinquish power. To create a decent work, in this capitalist world, everything is commodified. Education is a commodity. Whatever, health is a commodity. Everything, it's a commodified. And then if you don't have money to do that, you buy best healthcare, you know what is going to happen in Africa. There are certain countries, in order for you to be admitted in the hospital, so you need to pay collateral. And then when you look at those countries, they are rich in terms of natural resources. Where does the money go? That is the problem. That is what we are saying here, brother. We know that we'll need a very strong military institution, because Africa is a very nice cake. It's the cake is very nice, and everybody want to get a piece of cake. So obviously people will come and fight. So we'll need to have a very strong military institution that will be able to defend the interest of this continent. So that is the reality. So by saying that people are going to take weapons and go and start looking for people, in fact, no, the war will be between the class that owns and the class which does not own. They have and they have not. And this is where this thing is going to happen, because those who have not, now they are tired. They've been indoctrinated, they've been given a message of hope and hope. Different institutions have been used to ensure that they continue to believe in darkness. Up until now, even in our churches, now it's about don't worry about the things of the world. Our life is eternal life. God is preparing for us good things and what and what. Forget about the things that we see. So that particular message, now people are starting challenging, for how long are we continue to live in this kind of life? So by challenging the status quo, whether you like it or not, they will backfire. We said the Lumumbas, they were killed, the whatever, the Kwame Nkrumah. These are the individuals. And then when the people, they will rise up against the system itself, people will be shot. They will deploy the army, the repressive state apparatus. They will send them to the streets. They will go and shoot to kill, so that they can continue maintaining the status quo. By then, the people say that no, enough is enough. If you are going to kill us all. And that will be the end of the system. So that is the war that we are talking here. We are not talking about the war of going door to door, say that, hey, you are an Indian, we kill you. You are a white, we kill. No, it's a war of ownership. And this ownership of means of production, it won't be given to us on the silver platter, because those who control, they know the importance of that ownership. The poverty that we are going through in this continent, the whatever unemployment and so forth and so on. The moment Africa is able to be independent politically, economically, and military, then you will see what is going to happen in other continents. This is the reason why people like when we say the Lumumbas and so forth, they were talking about this thing: economy, politics, and military. You cannot be in a political power without economic power. There is nothing, absolutely nothing that you are going to do. That is why you can see even our own African president, they are frustrated. Go to Tunisia, the president is frustrated because he cannot address the socio-economic conditions of Tunisian people. To scapegoat what he does, no. Our problem is these people are coming from Cote d'Ivoire. The people are coming from sub-Saharan countries, diverting people from the real situation. So this is the way the war will emanate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've gone way over time, but I really must give our brother Conrad Kabala an opportunity to leave us with some concluding remarks to sum up, what we've been talking about today.
Thank you very much, Queen, and thank you very much to your audience and to Professor Antumi and King Kapele. One thing I can say is that when you analyze the whole situation of Africa, you see that it's a situation of powerlessness. Africa needs power, and Professor Antumi mentioned it as well, that we need power. And when you talk about power in the context of today's reality, power is manifested in one dimension, and that dimension is capability of destruction. When you say that the United States is a powerful country, it's not because the United States has a high morality or high spirituality above other people, simply because they have the capability of destruction. They can inflict destruction on your country at the level that you cannot imagine, because they have nuclear weapons, all these weapons that you cannot imagine. And that is the essence of power today. So that tells you already that they have prepared themselves well for war. So us as African people, if we want to rise, we need the power. And that power cannot be anything else but the capability of destruction. Destroy anything that stands on our ways of freedom and our ways of emancipation. That is the only thing that will liberate Africa. If we don't have that power, which is, I repeat again, the capability of destruction, to inflict destruction upon your enemy. If we don't develop that, we have to forget about African liberation. in African emancipation. So, and for us to get that, we need to organize ourselves through ideas of Pan-Africanism, revolutionary Pan-Africanism. It requires your participation. It requires my participation. It doesn't need only the elite. As I said, there's always two solutions to every problem in this world. There's a solution of the elites, the solution of the masses. The elites want to maintain the system and the status quo as it is because it's benefiting them. But as the masses, we want to invent the system so that we can also have our means or our needs met with, so to say. Sorry. So there will be conflict. So we need to be well prepared. We need to be disciplined. We need to be committed. And we need to understand what we are doing. Knowledge is very important. We don't need to be distracted. So this is what I can leave with us today. The fight is huge. It requires a very serious and disciplined commitment from every African people, from all walks of life. Whether you are a carpenter, mechanics, engineer, politician, you have a role to play in the struggle for the liberation and emancipation of Africa. Please join any working movement for this purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kabala, for those closing remarks. You summed it up beautifully in terms of, what we need to be doing as a people in terms of organizing and joining the works towards our revolution. And, thank you, Brother Kapile, for your contribution as well. Brother Antumi as well. Thank you so much. A wonderful panel discussion. I felt that we could have gone on for another 2 hours very easily, but we usually have a 2-hour deadline. But all being well, I really do look forward to inviting you all back again so that we can continue the discussion of how we liberate ourselves as Africans. And so everyone in the audience that's been contributing to the discussion via the chat, thank you so much. Please do remember to like the video, share, and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Also, you can support me on Patreon should you wish to do so. So next week, we've got another great guest lined up for you. And then the following strong, we've got a panel discussion that's going to be coming up. Let's see who we've got coming up next strong, shall we? Because the time goes by so quickly. Most of the time, I just can't keep up with it. So next strong on the 15th of March, we've got Leader Bandaka Solutions, how to reconstruct the African village. And to everyone who knows our brother Leader Bandaka, you will know that he is a powerful leader within our community, and he is a voice that you need to hear if you've not heard him. And he is a man that is solution based as well. So we look forward to that presentation next strong. So to everybody in the chat, thank you so much. To our wonderful panel, thank you so much. Sister Shanice out of here for now. More love, more strength, more voodoo power.